Okay, here's our shower base that we're going to install. It's a one-piece fiberglass pan made by Ove, 60 by 32, and this is designed to fit right into a cavity that's 60 inches long, 32 wide. So first thing we had to do was install the flange. Some of these come with an integral flange, some of them don't. So with this one here, we had to screw our flange on. I put a bead of silicone into the flange and I used the pan head screw just so that the profile was a little bit lower. So we put our flange on our three sides. This is designed to go on either side depending on your right or left installation. Next, what I'll point out to you guys is this fiberglass pan, this style, has these rings cast into the bottom that you can see here. These are tapered, as you'll see, a couple inches down here at the back of the pan and about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch at the front of the pan, giving you a nice slope towards the drain. So these rings are the only part of this pan outside of the edges that are touching the slab. So when we put our mortar bed down to glue this in place, I'm focusing on getting the mortar, of course, into the back edge of the pan here, but I'm also getting the rings set so that these are solid. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to set this pan down. We're going to dry fit it to see what our slab is like for level. We'll take it from there. Okay, so we're walking our pan into the corner. Again, it's a tight fit the way it's supposed to be, and we're sliding it down over top of our drain right into place, just like that. In some of your bathroom rough-ins, you're going to have a cap that's glued on, and in the case of this here, on our 2-inch rough-in, I've taken that cap off and I've replaced it with a temporary cap just so I can get the pan over easily. So what we're going to do now is we're going to check this pan for level, front to back, side to side, see what we're working with here. So you can see that we are pretty close. We are out maybe 1/8 of an inch from front to back, which we can make up with the mortar. And on this back side, almost level, pretty much the same. So I'm making a note that I'm going to need a little more mortar in the back end of the pan here. Now let's check from side to side. Here we are definitely out, and it looks like about roughly 1/4 of an inch. Check this side too. This side's the same. I'd say about 1/4 of an inch. So that being said, I know that this door edge of the pan is lower than the back. The slab slopes towards the clean out and the drain, which makes sense. I'm gonna have to make a note that when I put this mortar down, this mortar bed down, I'm gonna have more material in this front edge of the pan. We're also gonna make the mix a little stiffer so that it'll help to hold the pan up. And we're also gonna, once we have this installed, we're gonna put our screws into the flange, into the bottom plate here, all the way around, just to keep that pan in place once we've leveled it out. So a little thicker mix. I'm gonna have a couple of shims here as well, just to help with the install. So just to help out, but I've got some shims cut up. We're probably 3/16 of an inch to make it level. So I've got them back, middle, front, and you can see here from side to side we are pretty much perfectly level, which is excellent. So when we reset this pan into the glue, these will help out. After this is set up and dried, I'm going to cut these off, and you'll say, well, you've got a gap under here now, what are you going to do? Well, we're tiling this floor, so we're going to lay down our Detra membrane and some adhesive. So the membrane and the tile is going to take up a bit of the gap here, fill all this in. So we'll just be left with some grout and silicone to clean this edge up. So no problem there at all. If you're putting a thinner floor on, like a vinyl plank or even a vinyl roll, then you're going to want to put down a subfloor layer to take up your gap here, because that material is obviously a lot thinner than your 3/16 to 1/4 inch. So now that we have this dry fit and we know where we're at, we're happy with our level, we're going to take this back out and we're going to get our drain installed. I'll mention that once we get this mortar down and the pan is set in it, it's going to take, now I'm walking on this pan and there's very, very little bounce. This feels very solid, but the mortar itself is going to take whatever's left of the bounce out of the pan. It's going to feel rock solid. The other thing we're going to do here while we're here is just ensure that our 2-inch drain pipe has enough movement and flexibility to work with our drain once we have it installed. And this one definitely has some wiggle room here. We've got a cavity underneath. It's not cast directly into the concrete, it's in the pea gravel, so no problem. This is going to give us the movement we need to get this drain installed. Okay, here's our typical drain assembly. I mentioned earlier that we had ourselves a bit of a void in the concrete. This is also going to allow this drain assembly to sit down properly in the pan. Some of these are a lot longer than this. This one's about 2.5 inches. Not only does it allow us a little bit of movement in our 2-inch drain pipe, but it allows this drain to sit down when you set your pan, sit down into this pocket here. We've cleaned up the area. What we're going to do is we're going to put a nice 1/4-inch bead of silicone around here. We're going to put a 1/4-inch bead of silicone in on the flange of the drain, and we're going to set this in. So silicone, 100% silicone is one item you can use to set this drain. You can also use plumber's putty. I like the silicone. It's like glue. It's 100% sealed. Plumber's putty will work just as well, but in this application we're going to go ahead with silicone. So we want to put down a 1/4-inch bead, so cut yourself a 1/4-inch opening in your spout, just like that. Most caulking guns like this one have a little rod to break the membrane of this tube. And there you go. Set it in your gun, take up the slack, and you're ready to go. Okay, so let's take a look at our drain. We've got our stainless steel cap, and in this particular shower, we're not going to be seeing the drain. This has a linear cover that goes over top to clean it up to match this white fiberglass material here. So this is just your basic drain. So the way these work is you pop this stainless cover off. There is a little key inside and an inner ring that actually tightens down on a rubber gasket. So in order to install this, we're going to take out our inner ring and our little key. Take out our ring, take out our rubber gasket. Notice that the gasket has a beveled edge, which is going to face up. Put these aside. Let's take a look at the back side of this. So you've got your drain flange, your nut, you've got a rubber gasket that goes on the back side, and you've got a slip ring, a paper gasket. So basically, as we're putting this drain on, these are in this order, and make sure yours is in this order so that the drain goes on to the shower base, the rubber gasket goes on the back side, and then your paper slip ring goes on the other side of that, so that when you're tightening your lock nut here, it's allowed to slide and it doesn't grab a hold of the rubber gasket. So let's take a quick look at this. So I take the paper gasket away, and I'm tightening down our lock nut, and I come in contact with the rubber without this paper, and what it'll do is it'll bunch this up and fold it up. It doesn't allow it to slip, so you definitely want to have this paper gasket installed between your flange nut and your rubber seal. So we're going to start our 1/4-inch bead here and just put a generous bead all the way around. Don't have to go too crazy because we're going to add some to the pan as well. So get that prepared, set that aside, come over to your pan, and we're going to do the same thing, a 1/4-inch bead all the way around. Okay, take the tension off your caulking gun. I'll show you how to clean this up later. Okay, we're gonna set our drain into the pan. have to press too hard. You don't want to squeeze all the material out. Get it centered in there. There we go. Okay, now we're going to come around to the back and we're going to assemble the back side with a lock nut. So rubber gasket goes on first. Next your slip ring, your paper gasket, and finally your lock nut. Thread this on, tighten everything up to the point of hand tight. You don't want to over tighten this, so I mean you can take channel locks and snug it up maybe another quarter turn, but let the silicone do the work, let it glue this drain in. So hand tight, which is really good. Come around to the front side now. You can see our silicone is nice and even. It's pushing it out a little bit, but we have no gaps. So what we're going to do is just take a rag or a piece of paper towel and just clean up the extra. Okay. Okay, so we've got our extra silicone cleaned up, and we can wipe this down a little bit more once it sets up. But now we're going to set this pan aside. We're going to let this dry before we go ahead and mix up our mortar to set this down onto the slab. Just one more tip for you guys. We didn't use much at all out of this tube of silicone, so we want to save it for the next, as we get into siliconing the tile and the edges of the shower, the door installation. So we want to save this tube, of course. What do? How do you stop it from drying out? Lots of people will put a heavy nail through here. They make caps and stuff like that. But usually what works best for me is just keeping all the air out of it. So I'm going to take some vapor barrier tape, tuck tape we call it. I'm just going to cut myself a little piece. Take your tube, cleaned it off, of course. This tape's pretty sticky, so I'm going to put this around the tip of the caulking tube, and I'm going to take all the air out of it. And when I'm ready to go for the next time, this tube is not dried out, ready to go. Okay, we're going to mix up our mortar for the shower base. Rather than doing it in a pail with a D-handled electric drill, I've got this cement mixing tray. Inexpensive, works really well. Just need a tool with a bit of a blade on it like this to stir it around, or a small shovel works too. So this is a sand mixed with a bit of Portland cement. We're going to mix this up to a consistency that's not liquid but more like a damp sand. That way it doesn't flow all over the floor. So we're going to mix it up, spread it out, and give ourselves about a 1-inch base of this mix all around the shower pan area. So let's get to it. So we're going to mix this up kind of like a tile thin set. We don't want it too thin. We want it to stay where we put it. So just like a tile thin set, when you mix it up and you can make ridges in it and the ridges stay, that's the consistency we're looking for. So you'll notice that we didn't add the water first, as it recommended on the bag for the mix, because we want to mix it up to our own consistency. It's a lot easier to thin out your mix rather than start with it too thin. Start with a little bit of water and we'll just work it in. And honestly, this doesn't take too long at all. There is no need to rush this step. Take your time, work all the dry material out of the corners, and make sure your mud mixes thoroughly. Okay, we've got our mortar mixed up to just a heavy consistency. A little bit better than wet sand. You can see as I make marks in it with my trowel how it holds those marks. That's exactly what you're looking for. Just a heavy A little better than damp consistency, very close to wet concrete actually, but a little thicker than that. So, of course, we don't have the aggregate in here with this mix. So, pulling our blade all the way through the pan, making sure we got all the corners mixed in. Not a bad way to do it. Only takes a couple minutes to mix this up. We talked about these pucks on the bottom of this fiberglass pan, and you'll notice that there's no bottom for a good portion of this pan. So just take a quick measurement. We're just about 6 inches inside this pan, and that's as far out as I want to come with my mortar. So we did mark the outside edge of the pan, so just to give us a guideline, we'll make a couple marks on the concrete. So we'll grab ourselves a Sharpie here, and just to give ourselves a guideline, we'll make a couple marks on the slab here, just to have an idea where we're going to be coming out to with our mortar. Make sure we get out far enough. Take this tray to dump out some of our mortar here. Start to spread that around. As you can see here, guys, this is not an exact science. It's you don't have to be as perfect as concrete. So take your time, spread it around. You can see the consistency of this mix allows me to work with it quite easily and put it where we need it. So we're looking for about 1 inch of thickness throughout this area. I'm putting it up to the marks that I've made. This is 1 bag of material I'd calculated to give us that thickness. You can take the edge of your trowel and test the thickness as well, and then in the end you'll see I'm pulling a little extra material up to that leading edge where we needed to have a little more to give us level. Okay, we got our bed of mortar laid out here. Definitely doesn't have to be perfect. Again, we're just trying to grab those base pucks on that pan. I did leave a little more material on this edge because we had to bring this edge up about 1/4 inch, so it's a little heavier in here. But I'm also going to leave the shims in as the pan sets up. So now we're going to get ready to set this pan. Taking a look at the instructions that they give you for this, they do mention that at this point you have an option to put down a 2 mil poly on top of this concrete, and they say that that is to have the ability to remove the pan after this stuff sets up should you change your mind or something changes with the project. For us, this pan's not going anywhere. Once we set it down, we level it off, and this stuff hardens up. This shower is here for good. So that is a step that they mention. We're not going to do it in this case. Going to take our pan and slide it into our space, come down over the pane. Like that, it's definitely a snug fit. Slide our shims underneath. And just so then, before we step it in place, we'll throw our levels on it, and that looks just perfect in that direction. We got to go a hair down on this side. It's good. Let's see what we look like across the back here. We're just adding about 1/8 of an inch to our shims here. 1 final check. If you have a rubber mallet handy, you can tap it down, get into the place you want to be with your level. Dead on. Double check this as many times as you need to feel comfortable. You got some working time as this sets up. We're actually going to let this set up for 24 hours. And then once we have it where we want it, and we are level and in place, we are going to fasten this flange. The kit provides some small screws. So we're going to drill out the flange. Not much to it there. Just a Phillips head screw, about an inch long. And we're going to fasten the flange into the structure so that as this mortar sets up, if there's any movement, we've got it covered. Now, if you run into a situation where your flange has a little bit of a gap between the stud and the flange, don't be afraid to throw a couple shims in there so you're not warping this edge as you put it together. And just set your screw in, snug that up. Let's do a couple more here. Make sure we don't lose our shims. Helps to hold the shims as you're pre-drilling, as you can see. Oop. And keep a hold of your screw. We'll put one more on the back edge. There we go. Okay, guys, next step. We had our 2-inch drain pipe quite a bit above the flange here, so we cut it down. There's a lip in the bottom of the flange, and you want this pipe about 1 inch above that lip. The reason being is because this gasket is about 1 inch thick, and you can see this flat bottom actually sits on the bottom of that flange and creates your seal. So to do this process, this is a cheaper way to do it. We used this bit. Fits into your standard drill. It's got a cutting wheel on it, and it's an internal pipe cutter. As you can see, not the best cut in the world, but we were able to cut off about a 1-inch chunk, which is exactly what we needed. There's a better tool that goes down in here into this piece of pipe with a depth gauge on it, and it's basically just smaller than the inside diameter, and it makes a really clean cut, but also very expensive. So for the do-it-yourselfer, this is about 20 bucks at the hardware store. I'll just show you here. This gasket only goes one way. The flat bottom sits on the bottom of the flange inside the drain. This is a tapered edge here, bevel, and you can see this beveled edge on this ring, and they're designed to fit together. You can't, yeah, they fit together this way, but this way makes a really nice tight seal as it compresses, and you turn this down. So we're going to show you how to put this on next. It's going to take a little bit of glass cleaner, spray it on the inside of this rubber seal, have it slide over our pipe a little bit easier. Now we want to work this down inside here. So we've got our gasket down around the pipe, and it is nice and even inside here, just sticking up just a little bit above the pipe here. We're going to take our trim ring and set this down, and we want to start threading this in. You don't want to cross thread this, so thread it in by hand. You can feel it make contact with the gasket, and you take the tool provided and you start cinching this down just till it makes good contact. Now we're just going to line up the 4 corners of this cover that snaps on there. We have ourselves an installed drain. So this particular shower pen has this sort of this decorative cover. You can see it's grooved to fit in these areas here. It's meant to represent more of a linear drain, but it's just more of a cover. Lets all the water run around underneath it. Easy to remove when you gotta clean it. So we'll do a final cleanup. There's a little bit of residual silicone here I gotta clean off the pan. And this will fit in there just like that. Nice little touch.